We start with the 9 News I-Team investigation and a controversial case involving a local coach.
It has to do with his indecent behavior with a high school student. Now, the judge has now reversed himself and reinstated probation for that coach. The judge's actions came after the I-Team raised questions. And tonight, one big question still remains. Was the defendant in this case given special treatment? Here's the I-Team's Kieran Chawla. Kieran?
Tucked away in Point Coupee Parish is Livonia, a small town of about 1,500, where the majority of people know each other. About 3 years ago, what started at the town high school made headlines.
We found inappropriate contact between him as a teacher and coach and my daughter by text message, mainly, at inappropriate hours. 11 o'clock at night, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning.
Sean Donahue says while reviewing his then 16-year-old daughter's cell phone records, he noticed one particular name and number showing up repeatedly. Antonio Garcia, the then 33-year-old assistant cheerleading coach at Livonia High. Donahue's daughter was on that cheerleading squad. These are some of those texts. What are you wearing? Only silk boxers. I'm naked under my clothes. LOL. Me too.
Just extremely inappropriate for a teacher who's, I teaching my daughter, teaching my child. I was angry.
A search of Garcia's email account found sexually explicit pictures of the teen and separate images of a naked adult male. When interviewed by detectives in January 2009, quote, Garcia knew that the juvenile was very upset and tried to take advantage of a weak child. Garcia knew that the juvenile was in love with him. Garcia was arrested and charged with indecent behavior with a juvenile. The arrest warrant was signed by Judge James Best. About 5 months later, June 25, 2009, Garcia agreed to this plea deal, which was approved by Judge James Best. Among the requirements, 7 years of hard labor with credit for time already served, 5 years of active supervised probation, and registration as a sex offender. Garcia and his then attorney, Tommy D'Amico, both signed the agreement.
We entered the negotiated plea and the sentence. Then I closed my file.
At least that's what D'Amico and the teen's family thought. Then Judge Best did something that was unexpected.
It's unusual in a negotiated plea as a general rule for the judge to go in and modify because you're agreeing to something. It's contractual in nature.
In May 2011, 2 years into his 5-year required probation, Garcia filed a motion without D'Amico's knowledge to terminate his probation. 7 months later in December, David Marquette of New Road started acting as Garcia's attorney and filed the same motion on December 28, 2011. A hearing was set just 9 days later. Notice the 3 parties who were served the notice and told about the hearing: Garcia, Attorney Marquette, and the district attorney's office in New Roads, whose prosecutor had recused himself from the case back in 2009. The lead investigating agency, the state attorney general's office, was not notified. Neither was Tommy D'Amico, who thought he was Garcia's attorney of record.
The prosecuting agency under the law has to be notified under the Code of Criminal Procedure.
How did you find out that the probation had been lifted?
I got a call from you.
The Livonia police chief, who was against ending the probation early and took the initial report, told the I-Team he also was not notified about the January 6th hearing to end Garcia's probation. Lastly, neither was the victim's dad, who got an unexpected call about Garcia's probation.
The judge wanted to let him off early off his probation, and what was my opinion of it? I told him no, under no circumstance do I want him let off of probation. He needs to do his 5 years.
During our investigation, sources told the I-Team that Garcia and Judge Best, who had accepted Garcia's plea deal, had become friendly, attending St. Mary Catholic Church of False River and singing in choir together. At the January 6th hearing before Judge James Best, Garcia and attorney Marquette submitted this report highlighting a doctor's opinion. Quote, I believe his prognosis to be good and consider him low risk to the community. Judge James Best terminated all conditions of the probation, meaning Garcia did not have to serve the remaining half of his 5-year probation sentence, which did not sit well with some not notified of the hearing.
At a court case that involves your daughter as the victim, you were not even involved in the probation being lifted.
Very upset. He wasn't given that long of a probation, 5 years probation as it is. For what he did, he should have served the 5 years, I think.
The I-Team called the state attorney general's office last Wednesday, asking if it was aware Garcia's probation had been lifted. We were told we made them aware of it, and they immediately filed this motion in response for the judge to set aside the early termination of probation because they were not notified of the January 6th hearing. That was last Thursday around noon.
Less than 3 hours later, Judge James Best called my cell phone asking for me specifically to tell me a new hearing had been set to reconsider his decision to lift Garcia's probation. That's because the state attorney general's office was not notified of the previous hearing.
This afternoon, another major development. Judge Best informed the state attorney general's office he had, effective today, reinstated Garcia's probation and canceled tomorrow's hearing.
Today, we were notified that the defendant, in this case, Mr. Garcia, had withdrawn his request to have his probation terminated early, so therefore there's no reason for a hearing now, and he's back on probation just like none of this ever happened.
Now, I called the victim's father, Mr. Donahue, earlier this evening, telling him Garcia's probation had been reinstated effective today. He told me he was, quote, very happy to see he will serve out his probation and thinks it's the right thing. For the 9 News I-Team, I'm Kieran Chawla. Donna, back to you.